Hey guys, what's up? My name is Karen, and today's video is way overdue, but I think it's still very important to talk about, which is why I've decided to still make this. So as everybody watching this should know, 13 Reasons Why has probably become Netflix's most controversial show since it was released at the end of March. It's received just as much praise as it has negativity. So after a whole month of basically putting this off, I've decided that today I will finally be filming my review of 13 Reasons Why. I actually didn't finish watching it until last week, and I decided to give myself a few days to kind of think about everything that I watched and all the other views out there before I sat down to actually film this. Most booktubers have made their videos by now, but I think it's kind of interesting the fact that I'm making mine now. One of the reasons being that it is now Mental Health Awareness Month, so I think a totally appropriate time to be talking about it. And like I said, basically every video with every opinion left and right has been released. So now I'm basically coming to you guys sitting on the post. I do have a lot of views that sway both ways in the argument around this show. So with today's video, I want to hit on a few different things. Obviously, I want to hit really quickly kind of the overall production value of the show, so how I feel about that. Obviously, since I'm a booktuber, I want to talk about it in relation to the book that it is based on. But most importantly, I do want to hit on a lot of the things that have been brought up concerning the fact that it is a TV show that deals heavily with mental illness. So first off, the show itself. I have to say that overall, I feel that the show was very well done from a production point of view. I think the two best things that the show definitely had going for it was the soundtrack, which I have on my iPod and is absolutely amazing. But most importantly, the acting on the show. I have to give big props to Dylan Minnette, who plays Clay, and Catherine Langsford, who plays Hannah, for just bringing such a raw realness to their portrayals of the characters. And Kate Walsh, I have to give some love because I'm a big Grey's Anatomy fan, and she absolutely killed her performance as Hannah's mother. And obviously the entire cast of the show did an absolutely amazing job with their roles. It is incredibly heavy subject matter, and the way that they were able to portray their roles and really make them seem like real people that were affected by such a big tragedy was really great to see. But of course the big thing with a show like this is comparing it to the book. And while I did enjoy the show and found it a bit addictive, I have to say that overall I really still enjoyed the book a lot more. I think it's no question by now that they made a lot of significant changes from the book. I mean, for one, in the book, Clay listens to all the tapes over the course of one night. He goes to every single location that Hannah talks about, which he stops doing about halfway through the episodes. And this whole thing with how the other students are dealing with it, their parents, and the whole lawsuit is not in the book at all. It is really just Clay's journey listening to this tape and just thinking about everything that's happened to Hannah and if he could have possibly done anything to save her. I had always felt that the book would have made an absolutely amazing movie, and I think if they had done that and written it so that it was very similar to the book and you didn't really see much of the other stuff that they added to the show, that it would have been really well received and that people might have found less issues with it, especially since the addition of all the other characters in the high school setting, everything almost made it really feel like this big teen drama, which given how serious this is, might not have been the most appropriate approach to it. I can admit that. Not only that, but a lot of the characters do seem very different from the way they are discussed in the book. More specifically, I think Clay and Hannah are actually very drastically changed from the way they are in the book. In the book, Clay isn't normally someone that is willing to stand up to people, and you get the impression that he's not really that popular in school either. That was the other thing too, is that all these people that Hannah names as her 13 Reasons Why weren't all part of the same social circle. I do agree with wanting to portray Clay as kind of like a not so perfect teenager. I think that is in a way more realistic, but I do think a lot of people probably wanted to see the way he was portrayed more in the book. But I do think they were pretty smart in the way they went with him in the TV show, because again, while everybody loves Clay in the book, it was more realistic to portray him as not so perfect. which I think they did a really good job of that. Hannah is also very different from the way she is in the book. I actually got the impression reading the book that she was somebody that was very, very shy and very, very quiet. But in the TV show, she's portrayed as being a little bit more abrasive, which I think that's something that bothered a lot of people for many, many reasons, which I'm going to get into a bit later. But I think in a way that change also kind of worked really well for the show, though, because it shows how with a lot of people that are struggling with mental illness, sometimes like they act so happy and put on this act all the time, you have absolutely no idea what's going on with them. So although it doesn't really suit the quiet Hannah that everybody that read the book is used to, I think it really speaks to kind of what's going on in terms of mental health and things in high schools these days, and how everybody wants to hide what they're truly feeling. I think Catherine Langsford did the best job of portraying Hannah that way. So again, yes, it's bothersome to see that change from the book, but did it work out for the show in the end? I'd say so, definitely. I think the one character that was probably the most consistent from the book was actually Tony. Although Tony definitely has a lot more involvement in the TV show than just the little instances he shows up in the book, I think he is definitely the most true to everything that the character stands for in the book. I think the thing that really stood out to me the most in terms of differences between the book and the TV show was the whole plot line surrounding the lawsuit and how all of the people mentioned on the tapes before Clay are kind of coming together to make sure Clay doesn't do anything, and they're scheming and they want to make sure Bryce doesn't hear his tape. And that part kind of didn't seem the most realistic to me because it just didn't feel like a bunch of teenagers would actually go that far to try and keep their secrets from getting out there. Like, I could imagine there being some panic and stuff, but the actual, like, meeting in the cafeteria and whispering and sneaking around and trying to intimidate Clay, like, that just seemed really weird to me. And while that made the show very interesting, it still kept coming back to me like, this isn't in the book and I don't know how I feel about this. But at the same time, that is what makes you want to keep watching, is what's going to happen here. So basically, some of the changes made sense to me in ways, even if they were a little bit bothersome, but I think they did what's best for the TV show format. And now I'm going to kind of get into the heavier topics surrounding this. The one thing I really want to say before continuing on is that I don't think, whatever your stance is on this show, that you should feel guilty about anything. If you're someone who believes that this is a really great show and you want to watch it and you want to talk about it and you're addicted to it and excited for it, I think you are absolutely allowed to love this show. There shouldn't be anyone or any reason out there to make you feel like you are a bad person for enjoying this show. And secondly, if you are someone who found you were extremely triggered by this show, that it was in your best interest not to watch it, you feel that there are instances in this show where they could have improved the way they portrayed it, that you don't necessarily agree with everything that went on in the show, then you are absolutely allowed to have those views as well, and you shouldn't let anyone tell you that you are overreacting or anything like that by having those views. You are allowed to put your mental health first. Jamie Tworkowski, who is the founder of To Write Love in Her Arms and also the author of my favorite book there, actually wrote a blog post about it, and he basically said, you know, you should be patting yourself on the back if you made the decision to put your own mental health before pop culture, which I think is very important. I do think if you are absolutely fine sitting through the show, then you are allowed to do that. If you are not fine and cannot sit through the show, you do not have to feel guilty about that either. So I feel like the next thoughts I have are going to be all over the place, just kind of as I think about them, but it is a very emotional topic, so I think it's best to kind of just be raw with it and let it come out as it comes to me. So I was super, super excited for this show for two reasons. The first one being, I actually read the book a few years after it first came out. My sister somehow got her hands on it, and it's one of her favorite books ever. So she actually recommended it to me shortly after she finished reading it, and I read it and absolutely fell in love with it. I thought it spoke very strongly to mental health issues. I thought it was a really important book because it spoke about how the littlest things can drive a person to no return, basically. And I felt like it was a really important book about bullying, as well as what happens when someone takes their own life, what kind of feelings that leaves behind, and how do people deal with that. I do think, even though the outcome wasn't necessarily the best in the book, that so much in that book was discussed that it could help someone that was struggling, and that they'd be able to see, like, you know, maybe I can find help. Maybe I don't have to go down the same path that Hannah Baker did. So I've always advocated for that book ever since I read it. And the second reason that I was really excited for the TV show to come out was because I am someone that not only advocates for mental health awareness, but I do struggle with mental health myself. This is really weird for me to admit, because I've never openly talked about everything that I've been struggling with on a platform or even face to face, so that, like, actually acknowledging to people that yes, I have things going on with me. But I have basically struggled with depression for as long as I can remember, and actually the last year or so has been very difficult for me. On top of that, I've also developed social anxiety as well as OCD over the past years. My OCD was probably most prominent when I was in high school and university, and my social anxiety really started to form when I was in high school as well. And while the OCD has faded a bit but still shows up now and then, the anxiety has lived on with my depression. When I first read the book, I think I was at a much happier point in my life, even though I was still kind of struggling with my mental health. And then flash forward to now, with the current state that I'm in, seeing that the show was coming out, I thought that maybe this would be just what I needed, is that other form of source material that I felt I could relate to. So I was looking forward to that. As sad as I figured it was going to be, I was just really excited to see a book that I really connected to so many years ago be brought to life. But of course, people have had many issues with it since it came out. Lots of people think the show is very harmful for various reasons. Many psychologists and organizations have spoken out against it. And here in Canada, a lot of schools even sent letters home with parents urging them to talk to their kids about the show and even watch it with them. Which I definitely do think that's very important, that kids feel like they have somebody to go talk to about this show, and that parents are aware of kind of what is going on. But there's been lots of people that have taken issues with multiple things on the show that I don't necessarily agree with. So I'm sure some people might not like everything I have to say, but like I said earlier, I don't think there's any right or wrong opinion when it comes to this stuff, and I think as mature people, we can have kind discussions about this. Like, we don't have to fight each other. We can try to understand from every point of view and try and work together so that everybody gets to see what they want in this world. One of the things I do really want to talk about is people's overall view of Hannah. Me and my sister have talked about this, and we agreed that it was actually very easy to dislike Hannah, all due to kind of the way she was portrayed in this show with her abrasive personality and everything. And I think one of the big issues that people took was the way that she recorded her 13 Reasons Why. Just kind of the way she sounded as she was recording them. People thought that, like, she was enjoying the fact that she was gonna get revenge and things like that. Which, I have to say, if you read the book, it does not play off that way to me. You can definitely feel the sadness and distress in Hannah's words on all the tapes in the book. So I really hope that most people don't take their anger that they have towards the show out on Jay Asher, because Jay Asher did an absolutely amazing job with his book, and I don't, especially since they're so different, I don't think the book should come under fire for the way people are viewing the TV show. So anyways, based on Hannah's portrayal on the show, a lot of people were saying things like she wasn't actually struggling with mental illness, that she had a princess complex, just horrible things like that. And to me, that really was not okay, because honestly, I think unless you have really been there, even if you have been there, there is absolutely no way that you know what it's like to be a person that is struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts. Everybody is going to react differently too. You cannot sit there and say, this is how a person should act, because you don't know. Everybody is hit by different things in their lives, and they're going to react all sorts of different ways. I think too, if you have depression and you're someone that is severely bullied, it's very easy to blame others. This is coming from my own personal experience. I had my depression in high school, and I was bullied a lot too. The way that depression affected me, it was very easy for me to blame other people for a lot of the ways that I felt. And depending on how it would have had an effect on Hannah, it's very real for her to do that too. And I really feel too that the show definitely did hint at the mental illness that was going on within Hannah. In Zach's episode, Hannah explains how she witnessed Zach throw out the note that she had left for him. But then later on, he shows the note to Clay, and he says to Clay, I don't know what she saw, but I kept it. And a lot of people took that as suggesting that maybe Hannah was lying, but the way I saw that, that was implying that she was mentally ill. In people that are depressed and suffer from anxiety, it's very easy to misinterpret things, to sometimes read things a different way, and to view things in a way that they aren't actually. Because with me, I remember always feeling like that there was someone out to get me, that people just really wanted me to be miserable. I would hear someone laughing and assume they were laughing at me, and I don't think that that was any different. Hannah, just assuming that Zach was really out to hurt her, probably thought he didn't care for her and just threw the note out. And the fact too is that I think on the 12th or the 13th tape, she even starts to say something about how everybody's lives would be better without her, or that she was a problem that needed to go away. And that's a thought people commonly have when they are suffering from depression and suicidal thoughts. People who are perfectly happy and healthy don't just think things like that. And then for people to sit there and say that this is someone that just did it for attention, I think it was a little more evident than that, that she was actually struggling, and in those final moments, she just could not think clearly, and that's where the tapes come from. Is it well thought out? Yes. But again, if you have not been in that headspace about to take your own life, you don't know what you're going to do. You don't know how calculated you can be. And yes, this is a work of fiction, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. And I think with the show as a whole, the big thing is coming down to feeling triggered watching this show, and whether or not this show should actually be allowed in the first place. And I have to say, personally, since this is my review, as someone that has struggled with mental illness, I found many times when I watched a few episodes of the show at a time, I would walk away from it feeling overwhelmingly sad. It just related to me so much, and it kind of reminded me of how much I hated high school and my own personal things that I feel from time to time. So I cried a lot watching this, I'm not gonna lie. So the final few episodes I remember actually watching in the living room with my headphones on while my mom was also sitting on the other couch. Because even though she wasn't watching it with me and had no idea what was going on with the show, it still felt a lot better for me to look up and see, hey, there's someone that's here that loves you, and this show sucks, but you don't have to feel a lot of the same things as what's going on this show right now. But yes, it is an incredibly sad show, an insanely emotional show. And I definitely see how it could be very triggering to people. Triggering is such an important issue with books and film and television today, and I have to say I absolutely do stand behind the idea that we should perhaps start labeling things with trigger warnings. That way everybody knows from the very beginning if this is something that's going to harm them. I know Netflix did apparently try to do a better job of it after the show came out, but I do agree that maybe we need to start putting a bigger effort in to make sure that people will avoid shows that are really going to mess with them if they watch it. Because again, everybody's mental health is very important, and it's very important that they have entertainment that they can go to that isn't going to hurt them if they watch it. But while I am also someone that strongly believes in mental health awareness, I also am a writer, as a lot of people that have been following my channel know. And as someone who has an overall appreciation for art and being able to use your voice to express very important issues, I completely disagree with the idea that this show should not have happened to begin with. Because people had issues with things like the way they portrayed some of the parents, like Clay's dad, and how he seemed very dismissive of some of Clay's behaviors, how crappy of a counselor Mr. Porter was, and how they portrayed Hannah's path to suicide overall, especially since they did show her suicide, which was incredibly graphic and almost made me throw up. I wasn't so much sad by the scene as I was very, grossed out by it. Like, my arms hurt watching that scene. And while it's all very disheartening to watch and also very disturbing to watch, it's real life. Like, this is what happens every single day. There are parents that don't know what to look for. There are teachers that aren't really that good at their job. And there are kids that are affected by mental health. And sometimes they don't make it out of it. They don't get help and they lose. And it's horrible. No one should have to experience any of these horrible things in their life. But it is life. And people like Jay Asher and the showrunners and anybody else in this world, especially if it's an own voice, they should be allowed to tell their stories. Like, we should be allowed to tell stories no matter how sad and how graphic they are. I understand wanting to tell stories that inspire people to seek help and to come out of these battles alive and to do well and to show people, hey, this is how good parents should act. This is how good teachers should act. But people should also be able to tell people about the reality of the current state of the world we live in. Because you can do the super positive version of events, or you can do the brutal current version of events. Either way, the exact same message is getting delivered. People say that they believe the show is glamorizing suicide, and in ways, yes, I can see why people might say that, but that's not how I felt overall when I watched it. Seeing the consequences of somebody taking their life and how everybody that knew this person was effective is such a strong way of saying people need help. This shouldn't still be happening. But the point is that as hard as we try, things like this are going to continue to happen or almost happen. Remember being in school and they come in and they show you all those videos of what happens to people and their families after drinking and driving and things like that? This is basically the same thing. I still remember in my creative writing class, my teacher always said that there has to be a message behind everything you write. You don't just tell a story, there's a reason for it. And to look at a show or a book like that and say there is no reason for it, that's not accurate. The reason is to educate people on what is going on. Yeah, they took the brutal approach as opposed to the positive approach, but people should be allowed to talk about what's actually going on in real life. Yes, people need to be protected from things that can harm them, but we also shouldn't be living in ignorance. If somebody wants to tell a story about something brutal that happened in hopes that it might help someone to get help that way, then they should be allowed to do that. There's the part of me that wants everybody to be safe and happy and not feel sad, but then there's the part of me that stands for everybody's right to talk about what's going on in the world today through the form of art. And there's all these people that want the show to fail. They want to see it basically go down in flames, and they think it's that bad. And while, yeah, there's concerns, but these people have the right to tell their story. Like, it's reality. It's a horrible, horrible reality. It's a reality that makes me so sad and concerned for so many people out there. But it's reality. And I think Jay Asher, 10 years ago, when 13 Reasons Why was first released as a book, did an absolutely beautiful job of telling people about that reality. And the showrunners for 13 Reasons Why have now done an absolutely insane and addictive and creative job of also telling that story. And I just don't think that people should be deprived of that opportunity, especially when it's not some far-fetched idea. Like, that's the world we live in. I have gotten so all over the place with this review, and I don't even know if I've hit on everything I wanted to say. But the important points that I was hoping to get across was, I think overall, The show did a great job. Although it differed a lot from the book, I think it still did a pretty decent job of telling the same story. And most importantly, I do think everybody deserves the right to feel safe when it comes to their content that they're watching or reading or listening to. But people do deserve the chance to tell real life stories. And even if they do really hit home for a lot of people and it is a bit graphic, they deserve that right to produce content. So the whole time I watched this series and took in every single point of view, I felt very conflicted. But I just want to say that I think continuing to tell stories like this about mental health are insanely important. And although lots of people have issues with it, I'm really looking forward to season 2 because I think Hannah's story isn't over and the stories of everyone on her 13 tapes aren't over, and that there's a lot more to be seen, and I'm really excited to see what they do with it. Is the show perfect? Absolutely not. But do they deserve the opportunity to continue forward with it? Yes, absolutely. So I know there's probably some people that are frustrated that a show like this exists. There's probably some people that don't get why people are being so upset over it, but I just again want to reinforce that everybody's views are valid. Nobody is right, nobody is wrong. So let's just try to help each other out instead and be kind to everybody. And if you like the show, continue to watch it and enjoy it. And if you don't like it and don't like its approach to things, I hope you find something that helps lift your spirits in a way that this show couldn't for you. Alright, so those are my thoughts on season 1 of 13 Reasons Why. I apologize if that was a little all over the place and a bit jumbled, but I just wanted to say things as they came to me. And I hope that either these are things that you can kind of agree with, or we could at least have a positive discussion about this. If you want to have a positive conversation about it, leave your comments down below, or if you would like to talk one-on-one with me because you're not comfortable voicing your opinions about it since this is such a serious topic, I am more than willing to message people about this. So thank you so much for watching this. This video is a very important issue to me, and I hope that it might have spoken to a lot of the things that you believe as well, or maybe opened your mind to a viewpoint that you might not have considered before. Alright, so as always, spread love and don't be a troll. Bye!